So I'm always looking for ways to optimize myself and make myself a more productive and effective person in general. And one of the things that's been making rounds in recent years is the whole idea of cold exposure, right? So there's cold showers, cold plunges to ice baths. So I've heard like Joe Rogan speak about it, Wim Hof, you got Andrew Huberman. You got all these different influencers talking about cold exposure and the benefits of it. And so I decided to do a little bit of my own research to dig a little deeper, right? Because most of the time, these are just 2 or 3 minute anecdotes where they just talk about their experience and so on. A lot of research on my part just to get an understanding of, hey, what are the pros and cons of it, and gave it a try myself. I actually started last year doing cold exposure, and I've been keeping tabs of how it's impacting my life. And that's basically, that's a ton of content to cover in one video, so I decided to split it up into 3. And so in this first video, what I'm hoping to do is to break down the benefits of cold exposure and essentially have it in a nice and neat package for everyone to understand, hey, what's the science behind it and what are the pros of it. In my second video, I want to talk about some of the risks and counterclaims that are involved with cold exposure. Because for some people, it could be quite a challenging thing. And then in my third video, I want to talk about my own experience, how I went through a full year of varying degrees of cold exposure. But the first 6 months of that year was basically cold exposure every day, right? So just kind of trying different things to see how my body responds to it. But to be very clear, I want to give a disclaimer at the get-go that I'm not a medical expert, so do not take this as medical advice. It's basically my own research, understanding the pros and risks of it, and also my own experience in actually trying cold exposure for over a year. And also, everything I want to be talking about in this video is also applicable to ice baths and cold plunges and so on. Because essentially, for most people, cold showers is the way to go. You're not gonna have a cryo chamber like some of the pro athletes have in their homes and so on. So essentially, what I'm gonna be talking about is cold showers, but it's applicable to generally all cold exposure. And everything's gonna be timestamped at the bottom, so feel free to skip around as you see fit. So without further ado, here are the benefits of cold exposure. Now, the first benefit of cold exposure is that it enhances mood and cognitive function. And this is particularly for focus and alertness. Cold exposure helps release endorphins and other neurotransmitters that help improve your mood. And from a conversation between Andrew Huberman and Susanna Solberg, they were basically explaining that you're able to have 4 hours of the benefits of Ritalin and Adderall in a natural way without all the downsides of taking a drug. And essentially my routine is when I walk into the shower, no matter how sleepy you are or groggy you are, you immediately wake up. You will take a deep breath, oxygen will fill your lungs, and it will rush to your brain, essentially waking you up. It travels to all different parts of your body and you're just, awake and alert. Of course, cold wakes you up as well. And for me, after several minutes of cold showers in the morning, I step out, I begin my morning routine, and because of that, I can skip my morning coffee until later on in the day. I don't have to hit that wall when the caffeine drops off. And I'll also release a video on why it's important to drink coffee later on in the day, so be sure to subscribe if you want to see that video when it drops. The second benefit of cold exposure is that it can improve insulin sensitivity and improve your glucose metabolism, because your body is going to be activating its brown fat, right? The brown adipose tissue. As a result of that, it's gonna burn a lot more energy. And because it needs to burn more energy, it will start using all that stored glucose to burn it, right? And as a result, it gets those reps in and your body becomes more sensitive to insulin, which is a common problem for people who are using the standard American diet, which is basically a lot of carbs, a lot of sugars in your body. And all those things essentially forces your body to burn more glucose and burn more fat so that it can heat itself up, right? And by that kind of activation, it actually improves your insulin sensitivity. So if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic, such as having fatty liver, it will help you control your blood sugar levels. And the whole mechanism behind insulin is that it is a hormone that helps glucose gets into your cells. And then whenever it senses insulin, it will open the gates up and let glucose go in. And that cell will then have fuel to burn. However, because there's sugar everywhere, and then your pancreas needs to release insulin so that the cells need to know, like, oh, I need to open up to let the glucose in. What happens as a result is that the cells desensitize themselves to insulin, and therefore the glucose can't get into the cell. By doing cold exposure, what that does is that it increases insulin sensitivity, and then basically your cells are more energy efficient, right? It will burn more, it will burn better. And so it creates this positive feedback loop so that your body can essentially use up its glucose more effectively. The third benefit of cold exposure is that it reduces inflammation. This is especially beneficial for people with chronic conditions like arthritis or heart disease. When a cold shower hits you, what happens is that your body will release adrenaline and noradrenaline, and both of these have anti-inflammatory effects. And anecdotally, I can give you an example. For myself, I typically work out 4 to 5 times a week at this point, and a mix of martial arts, resistance training, or basketball, right? When I go especially hard, what I do afterwards is I take a cold shower. And what I found is when I do that, my recovery is actually much faster. So the next day, I am less sore. And for me, like the harder days are when I go play basketball. And sometimes those runs go on for like 2 to 3 hours. At my age, 2 to 3 hours is pretty intense. So what I do after a especially intense session is I'll go home, turn on the cold shower, or open a tub of water, just pull out the whole compartment from my ice machine in my fridge and just toss it into the tub and basically have a quick ice bath there. And what I found is when I do cold exposure after these intense workouts, my recovery is usually within 1 to 2 days. If I don't do that, sometimes my recovery would take a good 3 to 4 days. And so essentially what I found is that it's shortened my recovery by half. So based on these first 3 benefits alone, would you be willing to take cold showers? Let me know in the comments below. The fourth benefit of cold exposure is weight loss. And this is because, as I explained earlier, when brown fat is being burnt, you are using up energy. And brown fat is different from white fat because it's a type of fat that is readily available to be burnt to generate heat. And that's why people who live in colder regions actually have more brown fat that is readily available. And the reason is because of thermal regulation in more colder climates. From my personal experience, in my first 30 days of doing cold showers, what I did was basically I stopped all my workouts. I didn't do resistance training. I didn't work out during that time. And in my first 30 days, I found that my weight actually maintained the same. I didn't change anything. I didn't change any other variables. I didn't eat more and so on because I was counting my calories at that time. And what I found is like, whoa, my weight remained the same. My body fat percentage remained the same. And basically everything seemed to remain the same. So I would say that the benefits are actually pretty good. Now, I'm not saying to not do resistance training or to stop workouts altogether just because you're taking cold showers, but for the first 30 days, that's what happened for me. The fifth benefit of cold exposure is increase in pain tolerance. Now, the reason behind that is because your body would release endorphins that make you feel better. It will also release adrenaline and noradrenaline, which actually increases your body's resistance to pain. That's why when you play sports, when you're playing basketball, for example, and you twist an ankle, at that time, it doesn't hurt that much. I can power my way through it and so on. But afterwards, it's gonna hurt a lot more, especially once all that adrenaline has receded. Anyone who's ever done athletics and has been injured in a game would be able to tell you a similar experience as well. And so that's why it's not surprising when your body releases these endorphins and noradrenaline, your pain tolerance actually increases in the long run. And this is especially useful for people with chronic pain conditions. The sixth benefit of cold exposure is that it can actually improve your sleep quality. And what studies have shown is that when you take cold showers in the morning, what happens between 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. is that your body will actually increase its output in melatonin, which is the hormone that makes you sleep and make your eyelids heavy. And this is taken from a study done in 2008, which I'll put in the description below. Now, personally, I did not experiment with this one because I generally don't have trouble sleeping. And for me at night, I like to take hot showers, right? And because it's been a long day and I want to relax. And the whole mechanism behind taking hot showers is that your body actually internally needs to cool itself down. And when your body cools itself down, what happens is that you go to sleep. That's why when you go to do saunas or you go to do hot tubs in Asia and so on, you actually are more tired once you step out. So in Korea, where I lived for 5 years, whenever I went to go to a jjimjilbang, which is basically their bathhouses, every time I go to a jjimjilbang and do the whole thing, when I get back to my room, I just get knocked out, right? It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the day, I just get knocked out. Because in those hot tubs, the temperature is really high and my body is actively fighting to lower its internal temperature. And when your core internal temperature is low, that's when you fall asleep. That's why a lot of people like to wear fewer clothes when they go to sleep because it helps them relax. Therefore, personally, I did not try taking cold showers at night. Now that's just my opinion, but experiment and see what works for you. The seventh benefit that I'll cover in this video is that cold exposure actually improves immune function. The scientific mechanism behind this is that it increases the output of white blood cells created in your bone marrow, our body's natural defense to fight infections and foreign agents that don't belong inside. In a study in 2017 in the Frontiers of Immunology, what they found is that your body can increase up to 50% of its white blood cells output by cold exposure. So definitely there's going to be more white blood cells traveling around to take out the bad guys. And like I said before, cold exposure also has an anti-inflammatory effect, and a lot of the diseases that people face nowadays, such as cancer and other autoimmune diseases, are actually, a lot of it's coming from inflammation. And so that's another way of boosting your immune system. So based on these reasons, and there's 7 big reasons you should consider whether you want to give cold exposure a try, there's a lot of upside in taking cold showers. Now, am I missing any of the benefits? If so, let me know down in the comments below. If you found this video to be helpful, be sure to give it a like. In my next video, I'm going to be covering some of the counter arguments against cold showers and cold exposures, and also what are some of the risks involved with it. So be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for when it drops. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.